Today on Who is That Saint? We go back to the dawn of English Christianity, to a quiet monastery in Northumbria, where a humble monk gave the church the gift of memory. Saint Bede the Venerable was not a warrior, not a bishop, not a martyr. He was a monk, a scholar, and a man of such steady brilliance that he became known as the father of English history. He didn't spread the gospel with fire and sword. He wrote it into the bones of a people. Bede was born around the year 672 in the northeast of England, likely in what we now call Tyne and Wear. He was sent to the monastery of Monkwearmouth at the age of 7, where he began his education under Saint Benedict Biscop. From the start he loved learning. He also loved the monastic life, the chanting of the psalms, the rhythm of work and prayer, the silent devotion to God. He eventually moved to the Jarrow Monastery, where he would spend the rest of his life. That was home, his world, his university and his pulpit. Bede was ordained a deacon at age 19, unusually young, and a priest at 30. But his true vocation was scholarship. He read everything: scripture, Latin literature, church fathers, science, grammar, astronomy and music. And he wrote relentlessly. Over his lifetime he produced more than 60 works, ranging from biblical commentaries to historical chronicles. He wrote textbooks for grammar and homilies for Massachusetts. And he did it all with clarity, humility, and devotion. His most famous work, The Ecclesiastical History of the English People, is a masterwork. It tells the story of the Church in England from Roman times through Bede's present. A sweeping, spiritual history meant to glorify God and inspire a Christian people to know their roots. Bede was the first historian to use A.D. Anno Domini to date events. In a very real sense, he gave the English-speaking world a sense of time, purpose, and identity. Bede wasn't famous in his lifetime. He wasn't rich or powerful. He lived the classic Benedictine motto, ora et labora, pray and work. He taught the young monks. He prayed the divine office. He copied manuscripts. He wrote. And through it all he became holy. His contemporaries called him gentle, joyful, always working, always praying. His mind never rested, but neither did his heart. Everything he did was offered to God. In the final weeks of his life he dictated his last work from his deathbed, a translation of the Gospel of John into Old English. His scribe, a young monk named Wilbert, wept as Bede's breath grew shorter. But Bede pressed on. The day before he died he said, "I don't want my boys to read a lie or work a mistake." That was Bede to the end, faithful to truth even with his last breath. He died on May 25, 735, after receiving Holy Communion. He sang the Gloria as he passed. After his death, Bede's influence only grew. His writings spread across Europe. His commentaries were used by bishops, monks, and kings. And eventually the church recognized what the English people already knew. Bede wasn't just a scholar. He was a saint. He was given the title Venerable just over a century after his death, a mark of great reverence. In 1899, Pope Leo XIII declared him a doctor of the Church. To this day he remains the only native of Great Britain to hold that title. Bede shows us that sanctity doesn't require a stage. Sometimes holiness is quiet, disciplined, and written by candlelight. We live in a world drowning in noise and starving for truth. Saint Bede reminds us that knowledge and faith are not enemies. He was rigorous, curious, and completely devoted to Christ. His mind was sharp, but his heart was soft with love. If you're a student, a writer, a teacher, a history lover, Bede is your guy. If you've ever felt like your quiet work doesn't matter, he's your saint. Because while kings and armies fade, truth lasts. And Bede built a legacy of truth, brick by brick, book by book. Saint Bede didn't seek fame. He sought Christ. And in doing so he gave the English-speaking world its first great voice of Christian wisdom. He didn't write for applause. He wrote for souls. And 1,300 years later we're still listening. Quote of the day. It is better to suffer affliction than to prosper in iniquity. Saint Bede the Venerable.